is going on, everybody? My name is Kyle, for those of you who don't know, and tonight we're going to be pulling the fuel pump out of this 2011 Honda Civic Si, and here's why. For those of you who don't know, this car has a Walbro 450 in it, and I put it a long time ago, and I actually have, for some reason, forgotten how to do the trimming and wiring. I forgot the wiring, and I can't find a diagram anywhere. Maybe I'm just not looking hard enough. So what I'm going to do is pull the fuel pump out of here. It's going to be like a normal stock fuel pump. So this video will teach y'all how to pull a typical 2006 through 2011 Civic Si stock fuel pump out. But mine just has a 450 in it because I have another white Civic that's a 2006. And that one's getting a 450 also. Maybe a 525. But I got to figure out how to wire it again. So I'm just going to use this one as like my copycat. So I have some subwoofers in the back that we're going to go ahead and get out right now off camera because that's not going to be included in the actual getting to the fuel pump. But I'm going to go ahead and show you guys step by steps all the way from the seats to getting the actual ring off, which is really difficult to do, and you're going to need a hammer. I'll show you in a minute. And then actually pulling the fuel pump out of the housing. So this video is actually going to be done in 2 different days because I don't have the other Civic with me. It's at the shop. So right now we're just going to be pulling this one out. And for y'all, it won't be long, but for me, it'll be a day or 2 before I can go over there and actually do the install on the other car. So as y'all can all see right now, this is very difficult for me because I've relocated the battery in this car all the way into the trunk. Also, there's a sound system in this car, which is definitely eventually going to come out. So I've got all sorts of wiring stuff mounted to the back of the big seat, so you guys won't have this problem at all. But I'm gonna have to undo some wiring and stuff and some grounds, but as you can see, our fuel pump's right down there where that little bar is, so that bar is gonna have to come off. But step number 1 is going to be pulling the bottom seat off. So my stick light died. It sucks, but we're doing it with a phone now just to try to get some light in here. But as you can see, we've got our big seat right here on driver's side and then little seat on passenger side. So if you come in between these 2 seat belts right here and we pull the seat back a little bit, you should be able to see, hang on, see that little bolt right there? So the seat bolt actually is going to be this one right here, but I just didn't have it in, so I thought it was that one for a second, but it should be either a 10 or a 12 millimeter also, and it's right next to this one. This should just slide right out. You're gonna have some trouble with your seat belts, but just slide those right back and it should pop right out. Bingo. All right, so after we've removed the bottom seat, next step is to go to the passenger side back part for your back. And what I like to do is go ahead and take all 12 millimeters, right? These are brackets. I like to leave them on because they're basically impossible to get off without taking the actual seat out, and you don't even need to. They'll just flop down and be fine. Now this one, when we take the big seat out, that one will, I think, have to come out, but we'll have 3 bolts here. Mine only has 2 because I skimped out last time, or either that hole was stripped, I can't remember. This was a lemon, by the way. But yeah, we're just gonna take these 2 out. And then this seat should literally just, slide right out. As far as this second seat goes, mine is not gonna come all the way out of the car because it has all these amps mounted to it, and that would be a significant amount of work. But for y'all, you should have one 12 millimeter bolt right here with a sort of like bearing type deal. So like that'll spin on like some sort of type bearing. You'll just pull this bolt out, pull that bracket off, don't lose anything. 12 millimeter over here, 12 millimeter on the back of the seat over here. So you're gonna get both of those out, then your seat should be able to come all the way out of the car. Now mine is not. Next step is going to be, for me, yet again, I've got my ground and stuff back, all sorts of grounds mounted to the fuel pump brace, like this bracing back here, which the fuel pump's right below that. So next step is gonna be take these 2 12 millimeters out, and I'm gonna be really careful with all my stuff, but y'all probably don't have to be quite as careful. Okay, so now we can see our fuel pump cover. I've seen some Civics that have screws in them, like this one, like actually Phillips head screws. I don't know if that's somebody that accessed the fuel pump in the past and just put screws in it, but I've seen them with bolts, I've seen them with screws, so whatever it's going to be, just, use your best judgment. These particularly are Phillips heads. So once I'm gonna go ahead and get all the Phillips heads off this and then lift this up off camera. But when you lift this up, as you can see, you got your power go right here. You're going to have to be careful about the power. So basically just lift this up very lightly and then you'll see it plugged into the top. I'll show y'all in just a second once I get these screws out. So I got all those little Phillips heads out. Now as we can see here, we start pulling this up very carefully. You see that wire right there? That's got to pop out. So it does just have a little tab on it. It should just pop right out like that. Now you're safe. You can just go ahead and flop this guy out of the way right now. Next step is going to be, I like to disconnect the lines first. So these are just little pinch lines. So you just pinch them and it should unclip. But I'm not going to do it yet. I'm going to get a little rag just in case there's any fuel that's going to come out. So get a rag, put it under there, and then pop them out. This looks exactly like your fuel rail under the hood. So you all should know how to do all this. It's pretty simple to get this part done. I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll come right back with you. Okay, so now here comes, in my personal opinion, the hardest part. It's the most labor-intensive part because that little ring around the top is going to have to unscrew. And the only possible way to unscrew it that I've found at least is to get yourself a little bar of some sort. Preferably, you can get a big old screwdriver or something, but I like using these little bars. And then get yourself some sort of mallet. I'm going to use this little 2-pound and not hit it as hard, but I just want to have a little more force. You can use rubber mallets or really anything you want, but I'm going to use this guy. And then you're just going to slowly tap it in circles over and over and over again till it starts to loosen up. So as we can see here, I'm just going to start giving this taps. If you've never taken your fuel pump out before, or nobody ever has, it's going to be really tough to get off. As you can see, see, mine came off really easily because I've done this before. But you're just going to have to keep tapping this and try not to break off all the little plastic pieces. Also, you'll have, alright, that should be good for me, but you'll have these 2 little arrows on here. I lost mine, but there's 1 arrow on the actual pump housing itself, and then there is 1 arrow that is going to be on the actual ring. So those, once you tighten it down, should line up with each other perfectly, and it should be pretty dang tight. Once we start to pull this ring off, I want to really make sure that I'm being careful with the O-ring for it. So there's like a little O-ring here. It's not the most important thing, but just be careful that you don't tear it, because you can reuse these. Just give them a good clean off. Give everything a good clean, just to make sure you're not dropping anything into the tank. But the most important part about this is do not pull this out hard. So it'll be kind of sealed in there, and you'll have to kind of pop it pretty hard. So once you pop it, okay, so I popped it, right? On the bottom is your fuel gauge, okay? Your fuel gauge sensor, which I believe floats inside the tank up and down. So you're gonna have to go at an angle when we pull this out. So get this fuel line, and this guy out of the way, hopefully. I'm going to pull this up slowly, very slowly. Also, when you get it out, make sure not to leak gas everywhere. There's another O-ring down here also that you're going to have to deal with. So we're going to very slowly wiggle it out. Y'all will have a lot less stuff in the way. Okay, you hear that fuel draining? Keep pushing these guys out of the way. Okay, so now once we get to our bottom, you'll be able to feel where that little gauge is. So mine's on this side right now. Okay, I'm just gonna let that drain in for a minute. But you can see this little fuel gauge right here, and that is your actual fuel gauge. So it'll pop up and down inside the tank. I call it fuel gauge thingy. If you want the actual proper term, I believe it's fuel sending unit, whatever you want to call it, really. I don't know if this just applies to me. I'm sure a lot of y'all are on E85 out there, but all my cars are on E85, so I just wanted to give y'all a little fun tip of the day. Typically, when you're running full E85 on these cars, they're not really designed for it, so you start having issues with like the solder inside here corroding and stuff like that. Mainly if it sits a lot. I've never personally had an issue, but also you can have your fuel gauge go out, your sending unit, stuff like that. E85 poses a lot of issues on these cars, but I have personally never had a problem with it so far, and these cars have been on E85 for probably every single car has been on E85 for over a year, and my Evo has been on E85 for probably 2 years, and not an issue. So once you have your housing all the way out of the car, your first step in order to replace your fuel pump, mine's all different, but it's the same idea, same principle. So you're going to pull both of these little clips out up here. I can't get them with one hand, I don't think. Yeah, I can't get them with one hand. But you're going to pull both of these clips out up here. My wiring's all different because I have a Walbro 450 in it. So my little tab right here is, I'm assuming butting up against the bottom, or either it just popped off. I'm gonna figure this out further. I forgot what happened. Maybe I didn't trim it, maybe it just fit in there, but we'll see what happens. I'm gonna go ahead and pop the rest of these tabs off. It will be kind of annoying. It's pretty easy with two people. If you have one holding the top part and then one popping each tab off and holding the tabs so they don't pop up over and over again. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that off camera, and then we'll expose the fuel pump. So I've got this housing off now. As you can see, it wasn't too difficult with somebody else holding it. You can do it by yourself, but they tend to like pop back onto the actual clips over and over again. Trust me, I've tried it plenty of times. As you can see, we have a little bit of muck on ours, but we got a 450 in here right now. It's been trimmed out on the inside just so this little clip can fit. And this clip, the way it works, it's got three the same way as the other one. You'll just use a screwdriver to pull this off. I'm not gonna do that right now because I can see everything that I need to see for this fuel pump. I'll show y'all on the other one how to wire up a 450 and things like that. But as you can see, it's not that difficult. We have some soldering done here, but tomorrow, we'll come back tomorrow or the next day. For you, it'll just be 1 second, but I'll get the other housing and then I'll show you how to actually install the 450 on it. Same thing applies to a regular fuel pump, but you won't have to do any trimming and it'll just be a plug and play scenario. So fast forward a little bit, it is the next day. I went ahead and pulled the fuel pump out of this car, and I was gonna like just copy it, but I just threw it in the other car, and I took some pictures, so I'll show you all some pictures of in a little while of how to put the 450 in. I'm gonna go ahead and do it on camera with y'all also. It's gonna require some soldering. It's also gonna require some trimming, but for those of you who aren't looking at this video for the 450 pump, basically all you'll have to do is plug and play with the new pump that you're putting in. So as we can see here, this is one that has not been modified yet that I'm about to modify. But black is always going to go to your fuel pump. Gray is going to go up to the top of the housing. And this one will also go up to the top. When installing a Walbro 450, what we're going to start with is snipping this connector off, because this connector is not going to work for us anymore. Snip it off, wiring wise. Red positive, of course. Inside of the fuel pump housing, blue is going to be positive. Black will run to negative. So on this, we're actually going to eliminate this plug also for the 450 purpose. Snip all three of these off. For this, both of these wires, this little ground of some sort, I don't know exactly what it's for, and then your main negative are going to be wired in to the same negative on your fuel pump. You will not have to mess with the other one. As far as trimming goes, there's going to be multiple ways that you can do it, but as you can see here, the big new pump has this wider bottom to it. So what's going to happen with that is the wider bottom's going to hit, it'll end up, I'll show you right now, it'll end up hitting right there, right? Not gonna go in. So then your connection up top will not go all the way into this connection. So what we're gonna have to do, I believe, is trim out a little bit of the interior. And then what I'm also going to do is this plastic piece needs to stay here if you want to have a fuel gauge. So what I'm going to do is, we have a new fuel strainer, okay? Bear with me here. This new fuel strainer is far bigger than OEM. So, and it also, as you can see, it has a little 45 on it, so it's going to stick into like a really weird way. It sticks up almost. So I don't think, unless you squish it in there, this will fit into the bottom of this, so we may have to trim out a little bit of the bottom. But there's also other options with this, like if you're using different types of fuel pumps, it comes with a little hose in there that you can trim to your liking and have the fuel pump actually hang out of the bottom and trim the bottom of this. And then you can have it sit down a little bit lower. I don't know if that'll work. I've never tried it that way before, but we're gonna try to get it to fit in the stock housing area. So before I do this off camera, I wanted to show you all exactly how the wiring is gonna go. So you got your new 450 here. Once again, if you guys are putting another stock fuel pump in, you can close the video now unless you're interested, but putting a modified fuel pump in, so things are going to be a little more complicated. So red wire is going to be soldered on to blue wire, like that, bingo. Black wire. Now here's where it changes. So little black wire and big black wire will be soldered in together. I can't really do it with one hand, but they'll be soldered in together to this big black wire on the pump. So once I get those guys done, again, get yourself some Dorman heat shrink or any type of heat shrink, doesn't really matter. I just like these packs because they come with a variety of sizes. Get yourself some heat shrink. Do not forget to put it on there beforehand. or else you're going to be screwed and you can't use heat shrink anymore. So slide some heat shrink on there, cut it to however long you want it, and then I'm going to go ahead and spread these out a little bit, get my soldering gun out, and I'm going to solder them up off camera. One more thing, before you solder them outside of the housing, don't forget to slide, like you have to solder them, I believe, inside when the fuel pump's sitting inside of the housing. So I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to figure out the trimming, and then I'll come right back with you. So now that we got everything trimmed up, cleaned out, made sure it fit, of course, we're gonna go ahead and get her soldered up. Little tips with soldering: you can use the solder on the bottom of the wire. Don't actually touch it too. It'll heat up the bottom of the wire back and forth till it gets hot enough to where the solder itself on top will start sucking itself through, and you'll get a good strong connection that way. I also like to use a piece of tile, porcelain, ceramic, whatever you want to use, or anything pretty solid. You can use cardboard, I think, because it cools so fast, but I just like to use a little piece of tile to solder on. Got my iron out, got my solder out. I've went ahead and put some heat shrink on these guys. I have, as you can see, there's 2 wires going into one right here. I've kind of twisted them together on each one, and we're about to get a little bead of solder in there. All right, for all y'all Walbro 450 owners that are new to this, first of all, this is the worst housing ever. I hate these housings. I'm gonna go aftermarket eventually, full fuel system aftermarket. But as we can see here, I got them all soldered up. Got both grounds soldered to the big guy, and then red to blue, and make sure that they fit. Bingo. So next, I'm going to go ahead and try to figure out the fitment of this bigger strainer, and we may have to cut out the bottom of this, a little bit of the bottom of it, maybe not. We'll find out. So as we can see here, I barely got it to squeeze in there, and this clip right here is not going to clip. But that's okay because the fuel pump should sit on the bottom of the tank, so you shouldn't have any issues because it'll kind of be spring loaded. Let me know down below if y'all have done it any differently. Hopefully this way will work. I don't see why it wouldn't work, but I would like to know if anybody figured out how to do it differently. I did not end up having to cut the bottom out. I just figured out how to kind of ram that strainer in there to where it'll still suck just fine. I don't think we'll have any issues with that at all. But I'm gonna go ahead and throw it back in the car off camera. Hopefully y'all remember how to put it back in. I'm not gonna show y'all on camera, just go back in the video and see how I took it out, same way it goes in. Thank y'all so much for stopping by the K-Series Kyle YouTube channel. Go down below, notification button's always a good thing. Subscribe, comment what you thought about this, and if you do it any other way, and I will catch y'all on the next video.